I thought I knew my family until the day my parents announced they were moving my sister Bethany's entire family into my $2 million villa while I was recovering from surgery. 28 years of being the responsible daughter, the one who built her tech company from nothing, meant absolutely nothing when Golden Child needed a bailout. But what they did not know was that I had been quietly documenting every family gathering for months, and the recordings I captured would shatter everything they believed about loyalty and inheritance, and who truly deserved what in this family. Call to action. Before we dive into this family revenge saga that changed everything, let me ask, where are you watching from tonight? If you have ever dealt with family favoritism or felt invisible next to a golden child, hit that like button, because this story is going to take some wild turns. Make sure to subscribe because family drama this intense deserves a front row seat, and trust me, you will want to see how karma finally catches up to people who think blood means they can walk all over you. My name is Serafina, and I built my life methodically, deliberately, the way you construct a fortress when you grow up knowing you are second best. While my younger sister Bethany glided through life on charm and empty promises, I spent my 20s coding 18-hour days in a cramped apartment, surviving on instant ramen and pure determination. My tech startup specialized in data security for healthcare companies, and after 5 years of grinding, we finally hit our breakthrough contract with a major hospital chain. The $2 million villa in Marin County was my victory lap. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, a home office that could house a small company, and enough space that I never had to hear another person breathing unless I chose to. After years of sharing cramped spaces and making sacrifices, this house represented everything I had earned through sleepless nights and relentless work. But success, I learned, makes you a target in your own family. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was still recovering from emergency gallbladder surgery. My mother's voice carried that particular tone she reserved for announcements disguised as discussions. "Serafina, honey, we have wonderful news. Bethany and Marcus are going through a rough patch financially, and we have decided they should move into your villa temporarily. You have all that space, and family helps family." I almost dropped the phone. "Excuse me, my house." "Well, you are recovering anyway, and Bethany has the twins now. They need stability. Marcus lost his job at the dealership, and their apartment lease is up next month. It is perfect timing." Perfect timing, as if my major surgery was some cosmic gift designed to benefit my sister. "Mom, I never agreed to this. When exactly did you decide this?" "We talked about it at Sunday dinner." "You were there." "I was there, but I was heavily medicated and barely conscious." The family had literally made decisions about my property while I was drugged and vulnerable. The audacity was breathtaking, but not surprising. This was classic family dynamics. Serafina will handle it. Serafina will sacrifice. Serafina will make it work, because that is what responsible children do. "I need to think about this," I said, but my mother had already moved on to logistics. "Bethany is so excited. She is already picking out paint colors for the twins' rooms. You know how good she is with interior design. She might even improve the place." The casual dismissal of my choices, my space, my autonomy, hit like a physical blow. Bethany was going to redecorate my sanctuary, the home I had designed as a reflection of my hard-earned success. That afternoon, I received a text from Bethany with photos of furniture she wanted to move in, and a message that made my blood pressure spike. "Cannot wait to make this place feel like a real family home. The twins are going to love having space to run around. Thanks for being such an amazing sister." She was thanking me for something I had never agreed to, talking about my home like it was already hers. But the real revelation came 2 days later during a family video call to discuss logistics. I had positioned my laptop to capture the entire conversation, initially planning to review it later for any details I might have missed due to my medication fog. What I captured instead was a masterclass in manipulation and entitlement. "She will not even notice with that big house." Bethany laughed to our parents when she thought I had stepped away from the computer. "Honestly, what does one person need with 4 bedrooms? And Marcus says the home office would make a perfect man cave. We could probably stay for years if we play this right." Years, not months. Years. My father chimed in with his own contribution. "Serafina has always been selfish with money anyway. Remember when she would not lend Marcus the down payment for his truck? Now she can actually help family instead of just hoarding everything." The truck loan had been $15,000 with no timeline for repayment, and Marcus had a history of defaulting on debts. I had offered to help him find financing instead, but apparently that made me selfish. My mother added her perspective. "Once they are settled in, it will be harder for her to kick them out, especially with the children. Serafina would not want to be responsible for making her nephews homeless." They were strategizing how to make my generosity permanent, how to guilt me into becoming a landlord to my own family. The casual way they discussed manipulating me, using my love for my nephews as emotional leverage, revealed a level of premeditation that stunned me. But the conversation that truly opened my eyes happened when they thought I was completely out of earshot. Bethany's voice carried through the hallway as I returned from the bathroom. "The best part is once we are in there, we can start documenting everything wrong with the place. Marcus knows about property law from his real estate classes. If we can prove she is not maintaining it properly, or if we can establish residency rights, we might be able to force a sale and split the proceeds." My own sister was plotting to steal my house. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This was not about temporary help or family support. This was a calculated attempt to acquire my property through manipulation, legal maneuvering, and emotional blackmail. They had identified my post-surgery vulnerability as the perfect opportunity to execute a plan they had clearly been developing for months. I sat in my kitchen staring at the bay view that had motivated me through countless late nights of coding, feeling the full weight of my family's betrayal. They saw my success not as something to celebrate, but as something to claim. My achievements were just resources to be redistributed according to their needs and convenience. The recording device had captured everything: their true intentions, their manipulation strategies, their complete disrespect for my autonomy and property rights. But more than that, it had revealed the fundamental truth about my position in this family. I was not a daughter or sister to be loved and respected. I was a resource to be managed and exploited. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If my family wanted to play games with my property and my trust, I would show them exactly what happened when you underestimate the quiet, responsible daughter who had been paying attention all along. The next morning brought clarity that cut through my post-surgery fog like ice water. I replayed the recording 3 times, taking notes, analyzing their strategy with the same methodical approach I used for debugging code. They had underestimated one crucial factor: the responsible daughter they planned to manipulate was also the data security expert who understood exactly how to protect her assets. My first call was to Rebecca Martinez, the real estate attorney who had handled my home purchase. Rebecca and I had developed a professional relationship that bordered on friendship after she helped me navigate several property investments for my growing company. "Serafina, how are you feeling after the surgery?" "Better every day, thanks. Rebecca, I need to discuss a hypothetical situation involving property rights and family members." I outlined the scenario without names, watching her expressions shift from confusion to concern to outright alarm during our video call. "What you are describing is a textbook case of adverse possession planning," she said, her lawyer voice replacing her friendly tone. If they establish residency, especially with children involved, and if they can document any property maintenance issues or claim financial contribution to upkeep, they could potentially file for ownership rights after a certain period. It is rare, but not impossible, especially if they have someone who understands real estate law. What would you recommend for protection? Document everything, every conversation, every text, every email. Install security cameras with audio if legal in your jurisdiction. Most importantly, never let them establish residency. Once they move in, getting them out becomes exponentially more complicated, especially with children. Rebecca paused, studying my expression through the screen. Serafina, this is not hypothetical, is it? No, it is not. Then you need to act fast. Do you want me to draft a formal lease agreement with clear terms and exit clauses? Actually, I have a different idea. Something more comprehensive. After ending the call, I spent the afternoon researching planning and making discreet inquiries. My surgery recovery gave me the perfect cover for staying home and appearing vulnerable while I actually constructed my defense strategy. The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity. If my family wanted to exploit my generosity, I would give them exactly what they asked for, with conditions they never saw coming. I called my parents that evening, my voice carefully modulated to sound tired and resigned. I have been thinking about the living situation with Bethany and Marcus. You are right that family should help family, and I do have more space than I need right now. My mother's relief was audible. Oh, honey, I am so glad you see it that way. Bethany has been so worried about the twins having stability. I want to do this properly, though. Since it is such a generous arrangement, I want to make sure everyone understands the terms clearly. Rebecca is drafting a formal agreement that protects everyone involved. An agreement, Serafina, we are family. We do not need lawyers. Actually, we do. If something happened to me during recovery, or if there were any disputes about responsibilities or timeline, having everything documented protects Bethany and Marcus too. It shows that this is a legitimate arrangement, not just informal family help. The logic was sound enough that my parents could not argue without revealing their true intentions. But the contract Rebecca and I designed was far more comprehensive than a simple rental agreement. The document established clear terms, 6-month maximum residency, detailed property maintenance requirements, prohibition against any modifications without written consent, mandatory monthly property inspections, and most importantly, complete financial transparency requirements. Any household income expenses or financial changes had to be reported monthly. But the real protection was embedded in the security measures. The contract stipulated that for insurance purposes, the property would be equipped with a comprehensive security system, including interior cameras in all common areas. The stated reason was protection of valuable electronics and artwork, but the real purpose was documentation of everything that happened in my home. Additionally, the agreement required that all residents submit to background checks and provide references ostensibly for insurance purposes, but actually to create a paper trail of their financial and legal history. The final clause was my masterpiece. Any violation of the contract terms would result in immediate termination of the agreement with residents required to vacate within 72 hours. Furthermore, any attempt to claim residency rights or challenge the property ownership would trigger immediate eviction proceedings and potential legal action for fraud. When I presented the contract to my family during our next video call, their reactions were telling. Marcus immediately protested. "This is pretty intense for family helping family. Why do we need background checks?" "Insurance requirements," I explained smoothly. "The policy covers up to $5 million in liability, but they need documentation of all residents. It is standard for high-value properties." Bethany focused on different concerns. "Interior cameras seem like overkill. Can we not have privacy in common areas?" The cameras only activate when the security system is armed, which happens automatically when I am not home. Since I will be here recovering for several weeks, they will barely be active initially. But again, insurance requirements for a property this value. My parents exchanged glances that I pretended not to notice. This was clearly more complicated than their simple plan to install Bethany and Marcus as permanent residents. "How long did you say the background checks take?" my mother asked. "Usually 2 weeks for complete financial and legal history verification." 2 weeks that would give me time to complete my own investigation into Marcus's real estate knowledge and their financial situation. Because if they were planning property fraud, they had undoubtedly researched the legal requirements extensively. "Well," my father said finally, "I suppose if these are the requirements for helping family, we will have to meet them." "Exactly," I agreed. "I want to help, but I also want to protect everyone involved. This way, there are no misunderstandings or complications down the road." After the call ended, I sat back in my home office, looking out at the bay view that had motivated me through years of building my company. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt like I had regained control of the situation. My family had taught me that blood relationships did not guarantee loyalty or respect. They had shown me that my success made me a target, not a treasured family member. But they had also underestimated the skills that made that success possible. I was not just a tech entrepreneur who understood data security. I was someone who had learned to anticipate problems, design comprehensive solutions, and protect valuable assets from people who wanted to exploit them. The contract was not just a legal document. It was a trap carefully designed to give my family exactly what they asked for while ensuring they could never take what they actually wanted. But more than that, it was a test. If they truly needed help and genuinely intended a temporary arrangement, the terms were completely reasonable. If they had ulterior motives, the contract would either expose their plans or force them to abandon them entirely. Either way, I would finally know exactly where I stood with my family, and I would have the documentation to prove it. The background check results arrived exactly 10 days later, and Rebecca delivered them personally over coffee in my kitchen. Her expression told me everything I needed to know before she opened the file. "Serafina, your instincts were absolutely correct. Marcus Fleming has been researching adverse possession laws extensively. His browser history from the public library shows searches for California property, law tenant rights, and something called family property disputes going back 3 months. She spread documents across my granite countertop like evidence at a crime scene. But that is not the most interesting part. Marcus and Bethany filed for bankruptcy 18 months ago. The debt discharge included a foreclosure on their previous home credit card defaults totaling $47,000 and 3 outstanding judgments for unpaid loans." My stomach dropped. They never mentioned any of this. It gets worse. Marcus has been attending real estate law seminars at the community college specifically focusing on property rights and inheritance law. One of his instructors confirmed he asked detailed questions about family property transfers and how to establish legal residency. Rebecca pulled out her tablet and showed me a series of screenshots. We also found social media posts from Bethany discussing finally getting what our family deserves and references to long-term housing solutions that predate your surgery by 6 weeks. 6 weeks. They had been planning this since before I was even sick. "There is more," Rebecca continued. "The property search shows they have been researching comparable home values in your neighborhood. They know exactly what your villa is worth, and they have been calculating potential profits from a forced sale scenario." The documentation was damning, but what shattered me was the timeline. This was not desperation or family crisis. This was premeditated fraud planned while I was healthy and trusting, executed the moment I became vulnerable. "What are our options?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Legally, we are in a strong position. They have not established residency yet, and we have clear documentation of fraudulent intent. But, Serafina, I think we can do better than just protecting your property." Rebecca's smile had an edge that reminded me why she was the most feared real estate attorney in Northern California. "What do you mean? They want to play property games? Let us show them how property law really works." Over the next hour, Rebecca outlined a strategy that was both legally bulletproof and poetically appropriate. We would not just defend against their scheme, we would turn their own research and planning against them. The plan required patience and precise timing, but the foundation was already in place through the contract I had crafted. Every requirement they met, every document they provided, every step they took toward moving into my home would create evidence of their true intentions when cross-referenced with their research history and financial situation. "The beauty is that they have to continue the charade," Rebecca explained. "If they back out now, they lose their opportunity and admit this was never about genuine need. If they proceed, every action they take gives us more evidence of fraud." But I needed more than legal strategy. I needed emotional support from people who understood what family betrayal felt like. That evening, I reached out to my college roommate, Diana, now a successful marketing executive in Seattle. Diana had survived her own family financial drama when her siblings tried to manipulate their way into her inheritance after their grandmother's death. "Sarah, honey, I am so sorry this is happening," Diana said during our video call. "But I have to ask, are you completely sure about their intentions? Family desperation can make people do stupid things without malicious intent." I played her the recording from the family meeting. Diana's expression shifted from concern to fury as she listened to my family casually discuss manipulating me and potentially stealing my property. "Oh, hell no. This is not desperation. This is calculated exploitation. What do you need from me?" "Honestly, I need someone who understands that loving your family does not mean letting them destroy you. You have that always. But Sarah, you also need to document everything they do from now on, not just for legal protection, but for your own healing afterward. When this is over, you are going to need proof that you did everything possible to help them legitimately before they forced you to protect yourself." Diana was right. This was not just about property protection anymore. It was about preserving my sense of self and my ability to trust my own judgment about people I loved. I also called my mentor from the tech industry, Patricia Kim, who had guided me through the early days of building my company. Patricia had built her own fortune in Silicon Valley during the 90s, when being an Asian American woman in tech meant fighting for respect at every level. "Serafina, what they are doing is not different from corporate sabotage," Patricia told me bluntly. "They identified a valuable asset, researched how to acquire it, and planned their approach for maximum vulnerability. The fact that you share DNA does not change the fundamental ethics." "But they are family. Should not that matter?" "Family who respect you do not plan to steal from you. Family who love you do not research how to manipulate legal systems against you. What you are dealing with is people who happen to be related to you, but who view you as a resource rather than a person." And Patricia's words hit harder than I expected because they crystallized something I had been avoiding. This was not about family dynamics or sibling rivalry. This was about people who felt entitled to my success and were willing to commit fraud to claim it. "What would you do?" I asked. "I would protect my assets, document everything, and then make sure they faced appropriate consequences for their choices. Not out of revenge, but because people who are willing to commit fraud against family will absolutely do it again to others." The next morning brought a call from my mother with an update that confirmed every suspicion. "Serafina, Honey, Bethany, and Marcus are so excited about the move. They have already given notice on their apartment and started packing. Marcus found someone to rent a moving truck at a great rate." "When exactly are they planning to move in?" "Next weekend is not that wonderful. The twins are already calling it their new home." "Next weekend." They had committed to moving before the background checks were complete, before the contract was signed, before I had given final approval. They were proceeding as if my consent was merely a formality. Mom, the background checks are not finished yet, and we have not finalized the contract terms. Oh, that paperwork. Honey, they're family. Surely we can work out those details after they are settled in. After they are settled in. After they had established residency and made eviction complicated. The timeline was not coincidence, it was strategy. Actually, the legal requirements are non-negotiable. If they move in before the contract is executed and the insurance requirements are met, my homeowner's policy could be voided entirely. Well, that seems unnecessarily complicated for helping family. It is complicated because it is a $2 million property with significant liability exposure. But if they prefer, I can recommend several excellent short-term rental properties in the area while we complete the proper documentation. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Short-term rentals cost money. My villa was supposed to be free. "We will work something out," my mother said finally, but her tone had lost its warmth. After hanging up, I sat in my home office looking at the evidence Rebecca had compiled and thinking about Patricia's advice. My family was not backing down, which meant they were fully committed to their plan. But what they did not understand was that the responsible daughter they had taken for granted had learned something crucial during years of building a successful business. When people show you who they really are through their actions, believe them the first time. The trap was set. The documentation was in place. The legal protection was secured. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into the consequences of their own choices. Moving day arrived with the precision of a military operation, except my family had no idea they were walking into a carefully orchestrated documentation session. I had spent the week setting up the security system, positioning cameras to capture every angle of the common areas and ensuring that every conversation would be recorded in crystal clear quality. Rebecca arrived early, ostensibly to witness the contract signing, but actually to observe their behavior and provide legal testimony if needed later. I introduced her simply as my attorney friend who was helping with the paperwork, and I watched Marcus's face tighten when he realized a lawyer would be present for everything. "I thought this was just family helping family," he said, his casual tone not quite masking his concern. "It is," I replied smoothly, "but Rebecca wants to make sure I am protected during my recovery. You understand how important proper documentation is, right? Especially given your real estate law studies." And Marcus went pale. He had not told anyone in the family about his legal research, which meant I had just revealed that I knew more about his activities than he realized. Bethany arrived with the twins and immediately began making herself at home in ways that set off every alarm bell. She started rearranging furniture in the living room, moved my personal photographs to make space for her children's artwork, and asked where I kept the spare keys so she could make copies for convenience. "Actually," I said, watching her casual assumption of ownership, "the security system uses electronic access codes that I program individually. Much safer than physical keys that can be lost or copied." "Electronic codes seem complicated for temporary residents," my father observed, and I noted how he emphasized temporary while his eyes suggested anything but. "Not at all. The system tracks entry and exit times automatically, which actually protects everyone. If anything were ever damaged or stolen, we would have precise documentation of who was present when." The contract signing became a masterclass in revealing true intentions. Marcus read every clause carefully, asked detailed questions about the termination procedures, and specifically focused on the 72-hour eviction timeline. "This seems pretty harsh for family," he said. "What if there were misunderstandings about the rules?" "The rules are clearly stated," Rebecca responded in her professional voice. "But Marcus, given your background in real estate law, I am sure you understand why comprehensive documentation protects everyone involved." His face went ashen. Rebecca knew about his legal research, which meant this was not a casual family arrangement being supervised by a friend. This was a legal proceeding being managed by someone who had investigated them thoroughly. Bethany tried to redirect the conversation. "Can we just focus on getting the twins settled? They have been so excited about their new rooms." "Of course," I agreed. "But first we need to complete the final walkthrough and document the current condition of the property, standard procedure for any residency agreement." What followed was 3 hours of the most revealing behavior I had ever witnessed from my family. As I systematically photographed and documented every room, noting existing conditions and valuable items, they began discussing modifications and improvements they wanted to make. "The master bathroom could really use updating," Bethany commented, running her hands over the marble countertops I had custom designed. "Maybe we could split the cost of renovations since we will be maintaining the space." Split the cost of renovations to my bathroom that I had not requested or authorized. Marcus was more direct in his assumptions. "That home office setup is pretty elaborate for someone who works remotely most of the time. The twins could really use a playroom, and you could probably work just as well from the smaller guest room." They were not even moved in yet, and they were already planning to redistribute space in my home according to their preferences and needs. But the moment that confirmed every suspicion came when they thought I was out of earshot in the garage. The security system captured their conversation in perfect detail as they discussed their real timeline and intentions. 6 months should be plenty of time to establish residency rights, Marcus told Bethany quietly. "Once the kids are enrolled in the local school district, it becomes much harder for her to evict us. Family court judges hate disrupting children's stability. And if we document any maintenance issues or safety concerns, we can claim the property is not being properly maintained," Bethany added. "Marcus says that can affect property values and create grounds for forced improvement or sale." My father contributed his own insight. "Serafina has always been too soft-hearted to actually follow through on legal threats. Once the twins are settled and calling this place home, she will not have the stomach to kick out her own nephews." They were planning to use my love for my nephews as emotional blackmail while simultaneously researching legal strategies to steal my property. The calculation and manipulation were breathtaking. But the conversation that truly shattered any remaining family loyalty happened when my mother joined them in the garage. "How long before we can stop pretending this is temporary?" she asked. "Probably a year," Marcus replied. "Maybe less if we can document that she is not mentally capable of managing a property this size. The surgery and recovery medications could support a case that she needs family oversight of her assets." They were discussing having me declared mentally incompetent to justify taking control of my property and finances. My own mother was strategizing how to have me legally declared unable to manage my own life. I stood in my kitchen listening through the security system as my family planned the systematic destruction of my autonomy, my property rights, and my mental health. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I actually felt relieved. There was no longer any question about their intentions or any guilt about the consequences they were about to face. Rebecca appeared beside me, having heard the entire conversation through her own monitoring device. "That is conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse despite your age, and potentially conspiracy to file false legal documents," she whispered. "We have everything we need." "What happens now?" "Now they finish moving in, we let them get comfortable, and tomorrow we execute the consequences of their own documented plans." That evening, as my family settled into my home, discussing their children's school enrollment and making plans to redecorate my living spaces, I sat in my bedroom reviewing the recordings from the day. Hours of documented evidence showing their true intentions, their legal strategies, and their complete disrespect for my property and autonomy. They had walked willingly into a comprehensive documentation of premeditated fraud. Every word they spoke, every assumption they made, every plan they discussed was now recorded evidence that would protect me legally and personally. But more than that, they had finally shown me exactly who they were when they thought I could not see or hear them. Not family who loved me, not people who respected my success, not individuals who valued my well-being. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA and who viewed my achievements as resources to be claimed through manipulation and legal maneuvering. The responsible daughter they had taken advantage of for 28 years was about to show them the consequences of underestimating someone who had built a successful business by anticipating problems and protecting valuable assets. Tomorrow the trap would spring, and they would discover that their perfect plan had one fatal flaw. They had targeted someone who was smarter, more prepared, and far less naive than they had ever imagined. I woke up on their second morning in my home to the sound of power tools. Marcus was installing permanent shelving in what used to be my home office, while Bethany directed the twins in hanging their artwork on my carefully chosen gallery wall. They had been residents for 36 hours and were already treating my property like their permanent residence. The security cameras captured everything: Marcus measuring walls for built-in storage, Bethany removing my professional certificates to make room for family photos, and both of them discussing paint colors for what they now called the family room. But the final straw came when I discovered Bethany in my master bedroom measuring the walk-in closet and taking photos. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice level. "Oh, I was just thinking that since you work from home mostly, you probably do not need all this closet space. The twins could really use a proper playroom, and this room connects to what could be their bedroom." She was planning to convert my master suite into children's space in my own home. "Bethany, this is my bedroom. I need you to leave immediately." "God, Serafina, you are being so territorial. It is just a room and families should share. Besides, there are 3 other bedrooms. You could use any of them." "I should use a different bedroom. In my own house, so my sister could take the master suite for her children." That was the moment I realized that no amount of documentation or legal protection would make them understand boundaries or respect. They fundamentally believed they were entitled to my property, my space, and my life decisions. I called Rebecca immediately. "It is time," I said simply. "Are you sure?" "Once we do this, there is no going back to family relationships. Rebecca, they are measuring my bedroom to turn it into a playroom. There is no family relationship left to preserve." Within 2 hours, Rebecca arrived with 2 additional attorneys and a police escort. The eviction notice was comprehensive, immediate, and legally bulletproof. "Bethany Fleming. Marcus Fleming, you are hereby notified that your residency agreement has been terminated due to material breach of contract terms. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises." Marcus immediately went into defensive mode. "You cannot evict us. We have rights as tenants and we have children. This is our legal residence now." "Actually," Rebecca replied smoothly, "you signed a contract acknowledging that this is not a tenancy but a temporary accommodation agreement. More importantly, you violated multiple terms within your first 48 hours of residency." She handed him a folder containing screenshots from the security system. Photos of them installing permanent modifications without permission, removing my personal property, and planning additional unauthorized changes. "But more significantly," Rebecca continued, "we have documented evidence of fraud in your initial application for residency." The second attorney, David Chen, stepped forward with another folder. "Mr. Fleming, you failed to disclose your bankruptcy, your foreclosure history, and most importantly, your extensive research into adverse possession laws and property fraud techniques." Marcus's face went white. "That is just educational research. I was taking a class." "Educational research that coincidentally focused on exactly the legal strategies you discussed implementing in this property." David smiled coldly. "We have recordings of those conversations as well." The third attorney, Patricia Vega, addressed my parents who had arrived during the commotion. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, you are also implicated in this fraud conspiracy. We have recorded evidence of you discussing strategies to have Serafina declared mentally incompetent to justify taking control of her assets. My mother gasped. We never said that. Patricia played a crystal-clear audio recording of their garage conversation from the previous day. My mother's own voice filled the room. How long before we can stop pretending this is temporary? The silence that followed was deafening. My family stood in my living room surrounded by legal professionals and police officers listening to their own voices plotting to steal my property and destroy my autonomy. This is entrapment, my father said desperately. She set us up. Actually, Rebecca replied, this is documentation. Serafina offered legitimate temporary housing with reasonable terms. You chose to plan and attempt fraud instead. Every conversation we recorded happened after you had already committed to your scheme. The police officer stepped forward. Folks, this is a civil eviction proceeding, but the fraud evidence could support criminal charges. I strongly recommend you comply with the 72-hour timeline and consult your own legal representation. Bethany finally found her voice, and predictably she tried emotional manipulation. Serafina, how can you do this to family? The twins will be traumatized. You are destroying their stability over paperwork and technicalities. I am protecting my property from people who plan to steal it, I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. The twins' stability was never my responsibility to provide through fraud and manipulation. But we are your family. Family who loves me does not research how to have me declared mentally incompetent. Family who respects me does not plan to steal my home. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was a target instead of a person. Marcus made one final attempt at intimidation. This will destroy our relationship permanently. You will never see your nephews again. Marcus, you plan to use my relationship with my nephews as emotional blackmail to justify property theft. That relationship was already destroyed by your choices. The 3 days that followed were surreal. My family moved out with a combination of fury and disbelief, unable to comprehend that their perfect plan had been anticipated and countered at every step. They had underestimated the quiet, responsible daughter so completely that they never considered she might be smarter than their scheme. The security cameras captured their exit interviews, where they discussed suing me for emotional distress, claiming discrimination, and attempting to involve Child Protective Services based on false claims about the safety of my home. But every threat they made only provided more evidence of their malicious intent and continued attempts at manipulation and fraud. On the evening of the third day, I sat in my reclaimed home office looking out at the bay view that had motivated me through years of building my success. The silence was profound after months of anxiety and weeks of invasion. Rebecca called to inform me that Marcus and Bethany had consulted 3 different attorneys, all of whom had refused to take their case once they reviewed the evidence of premeditated fraud. They have no legal standing and significant potential criminal exposure, she reported. Most importantly, every attorney they consulted is now a witness to their admission that they planned property fraud from the beginning. My parents had left voicemails oscillating between fury and attempts at emotional manipulation, but I had blocked their numbers after the first day. The responsible daughter who had spent 28 years managing family expectations and absorbing their demands had finally learned the difference between love and exploitation. My family had taught me that blood relationships do not guarantee loyalty, respect, or genuine affection. They had shown me that success makes you a target to people who feel entitled to claim your achievements. But most importantly, they had revealed that protecting yourself from people who want to harm you is not betrayal. It is survival. 6 months later, I received a certified letter from Marcus and Bethany's bankruptcy attorney. They had filed for bankruptcy again this time, including legal fees from their failed attempts to sue me and debt from the emergency housing they had been forced to secure after leaving my villa. The irony was not lost on me. Their scheme to steal my property had accelerated their own financial collapse. But the letter that truly validated my decisions came from an unexpected source: my 8-year-old nephew, Tommy. Aunt Sarah, the crayon-written note said, Mom says we cannot talk to you anymore, but I wanted to say thank you for letting us stay in your pretty house. I am sorry we took your pictures down. I know you worked really hard for your house because Mom told Dad you did not deserve it, but I think you do. I hope you are happy in your house. That even a child had understood what the adults in my family refused to acknowledge. I had earned my success through hard work, and I deserved to enjoy it without apologizing or sharing it under duress. The note broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. Tommy saw me as a person worthy of respect and success, while his parents saw me as a resource to be exploited. The next generation did not have to inherit the toxic entitlement that had poisoned my family relationships. Rebecca had kept me updated on the legal aftermath. Marcus and Bethany had attempted to file complaints with several agencies claiming I had discriminated against them, violated tenant rights, and traumatized their children through wrongful eviction. Every complaint was dismissed when the agencies reviewed the evidence of premeditated fraud and the clear contract violations. More significantly, their documented research into property fraud and adverse possession had created a paper trail that flagged them in real estate databases. Future landlords and property managers would have access to records showing their history of attempting to claim ownership of properties they were renting or borrowing. They essentially blacklisted themselves from legitimate housing options, Rebecca explained during one of our follow-up meetings. The property management industry takes fraud attempts very seriously, especially when they involve family manipulation and legal system abuse. My parents had made several attempts to reconcile, but their version of reconciliation involved me apologizing for protecting my property and agreeing to provide ongoing financial support for Bethany and Marcus, despite their betrayal. Serafina, you have to understand they were desperate, my mother had pleaded during her final voicemail. Family forgives family, and you have more than enough to help them start over. But I had learned the difference between desperation and premeditation. Desperate people ask for help and accept reasonable terms. Predators research legal strategies and plan systematic exploitation. The healing process led me to discoveries about chosen family that transformed my understanding of relationships entirely. Diana flew down from Seattle for a weekend that turned into a week of processing trauma, rebuilding confidence, and planning a future free from manipulative family dynamics. You know what I realized watching you handle this, Diana said as we sat on my deck overlooking the bay. You did not just protect your property. You protected your ability to trust your own judgment about people who claim to love you. She was right. The most valuable thing I had saved was not my villa, but my capacity to recognize genuine care from performance and manipulation. Patricia Kim became an unexpected mentor in navigating success without family support. During one of our regular coffee meetings, she shared her own story of cutting contact with relatives who felt entitled to her achievements. The hardest part is not the initial decision, Patricia told me. It is staying strong when society tells you that family relationships should be preserved regardless of the cost to your well-being and success. But the relationship that surprised me most was with Rebecca, whose professional support had evolved into genuine friendship. Her fierce protection of my interests came from her own experience with family members who had tried to exploit her success as an attorney. What I learned, Rebecca shared during a dinner at my house, is that real family, biological or chosen, wants to see you thrive independently. They celebrate your success without trying to claim it, and they respect your boundaries without testing them. And the chosen family I built included Diana's unwavering loyalty, Patricia's mentorship, Rebecca's friendship, and gradually other people who had earned trust through consistent respect and genuine affection. But perhaps most importantly, I learned to be family to myself. The responsible daughter who had spent decades managing other people's emotions and expectations finally prioritized her own well-being and protection. My business continued growing, funded partly by the money I no longer spent on family emergencies, bailouts, and manipulation management. The villa became a true sanctuary where I hosted people who appreciated the invitation rather than demanding it as an entitlement. The security system remained active not from paranoia but from wisdom. I had learned that documenting interactions with people who felt entitled to exploit you was not cynical. It was practical protection for your peace of mind and legal safety. Sometimes I wondered if I should feel guilty about the complete severance from my biological family. Social media occasionally showed me updates about their lives, their continued financial struggles, their attempts to maintain the narrative that I had abandoned family in their time of need. But I had kept screenshots of their original planning conversations, reminders of their true intentions when they thought I could not see or hear them. They had shown me exactly who they were when they believed I was vulnerable and powerless. The guilt I initially felt had been replaced by profound relief. Relief that I no longer had to manage their emotions, fund their poor decisions, or absorb their entitlement and resentment. Most importantly, I had learned that protecting yourself from people who want to harm you, even if they share your DNA, is not cruelty. It is survival growth and the foundation for building authentic relationships with people who see your success as something to celebrate rather than claim. The villa overlooking the bay remained my sanctuary, but it had become more than just a symbol of professional achievement. It was proof that the responsible daughter had learned to be responsible to herself first, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their harmful choices. The trap I had set had worked perfectly, but the real victory was discovering that I did not need their love or approval to feel complete. I had learned to be enough entirely on my own terms. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself from people who claimed to love you but treated you like a resource to be managed? Maybe you have experienced the gut-wrenching realization that blood relationships do not guarantee respect or genuine care. Drop a comment below sharing your own experiences with family boundaries or chosen family. I would love to hear how you navigated putting your well-being first when family expected you to sacrifice everything for their benefit. If this story resonated with your own journey of learning that protecting yourself from exploitation is not betrayal but survival, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself when the people closest to you refuse to respect your success. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve relationships built on mutual respect rather than entitlement and manipulation. Thank you for listening to my family revenge story and for understanding that sometimes justice served means simply refusing to let people destroy you, even when they share your name. Remember that your success belongs to you, your boundaries matter, and chosen family can love you better than people who only see you as a resource to exploit.